breaking attack against Israel in response for the attack that came at the end of last month, which itself was a response to the previous Israeli attack and so forth and so on. We seem to keep going back and forth over these. It's a little bit surprising that Iran came back really this late. You may recall after the initial Israeli attack that knocked out a bunch of radar sites and some alleged facilities and factories to build missiles, etc., that the initial comment from the Ayatollah was kind of mute. He said, well, it's important not to exaggerate this, but not to underplay it either, kind of talking this way. Well, then over the past weekend, and again, actually today, they came up with a much stronger comment that says, no, we actually are going to attack. And apparently it's going to be quite biting is what they're saying. We'll see. We're going to try to break down some of this and try to figure out what may or may not come. With calling back Andrei Martyanov, we've had on before recently, for a veteran author and a Russian military expert coming to us live from Seattle, Washington, by the way. Also has his YouTube channel, Smoothie X12. Welcome back to the show. Good to have you back.
My pleasure.
Listen, a lot to talk about here today. We're also going to talk a little bit about things going on in the Russia-Ukraine war. Never any shortage of stuff there.
No, yeah.
First here, were you any surprised at all that the after the Ayatollah came out initially kind of a little bit tame, now all of a sudden there's this teeth-breaking response to Israel? And what do you think that's going to translate into on the ground?
It's difficult for me to say what kind of intel they have, Iranians. I assume they have a very good intel. So, and their posture definitely can change depending on what do they have at hand there. There is no doubt that they can deliver a really devastating blow, actually, to Israel. I mean, devastating, it depends how we define devastating in this particular case. But they certainly can do a lot of damage to Israel. And I think so it could be partially motivated, if we kind of abstragate from other things in the world, is the fact that evidently IDF is stuck in southern Lebanon. And that certainly shows you the dynamics of the conflict, dynamics of the war, if you wish, which definitely not in favor of Israel. Plus, Iranians are very well aware of the internal dynamics in Israel. So in this case, they decided to go away from the middle of the road approach and say, okay, yeah, we're going to do it. And that probably somehow, I think, in their mind may precipitate the collapse of Netanyahu government, and who knows, some kind of strife or, inside within Israel itself. So I think so that's the only way to explain it, at least from my point of view. I'm definitely not a great specialist in the area, but I think so they decided to kind of, push it a little bit over the edge. And that could be the explanation for their decision to, okay, let's go, if not full Monty, to something, closer to it. That would be my guess.
So let's take into consideration a couple of other things that are related to this. Now, for one of the claims made by the Israeli side and the Israeli supporters afterwards was that they had, quote, destroyed their ability to intercept incoming missiles by taking out lots of radars, some anti-aircraft capabilities, whatever, basically had rendered them defenseless in there, meaning that Israel could then go back at any time they wanted and deal a devastating blow. Now, if Iran launches something that's devastating and biting, as they're claiming here, then the full expectation is that Israel itself would launch back as strong. So the real question is, has Israel actually devastated the air defense capability for Iran?
Oh, no, not even close. I mean, there were some strikes on some infrastructure. Then they came up with some allegedly satellite image of one of 7 resonance radar sites, which shows nothing really. I mean, some minor damage, but then again, technical capabilities of resonance, which is the 360-degree radar with active phased array, that even if you hit one of the phased arrays or even 2, it still will continue to operate, because obviously due to the engineering solution of the air array itself. And that's the only thing I saw. Maybe they hit here and there, no doubt about. There is always leaker. I mean, this classic, salvo model issue of the leaker, some missile or bomb which gets through and damages something. There's that something went through. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they did take some hits, but those claims from Israel is just absolute trash. I mean, so Iran definitely retains air defense capability. And if it was damaged, it was not significant at all. I mean, and most likely, even if you look attentively at those critical radar, which is the early warning radar, which is the resonance, even if one of them, which they allegedly has shown the photo, satellite image of that, it's very easy to fix. Those radar are easy to fix. And then again, you can take a look at just a few days ago, one of those mastodons, Antonov 124 of Russian Air Force, landed in Tehran again. What was there? What did it bring?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. How hard would it be? From one of the reports anyway that I read claimed that it knocked out one or more of the radar sites for the S-300 missile batteries, and it claimed that none of the batteries themselves were hit. And so the question is going to be, how hard would it be, whether from Russia or elsewhere, for Iran to get a replacement satellite array so that it can continue? I'm sorry, radar array, so that it could make those things operational. Do you know?
S-300. First, there is no radar site really. There is the radar post. Actually, there are two of them. One of them for the acquisition and tracking of the targets. I don't think so. They shut that down. I mean, or they damaged it. If they damage something, it is one of the what is called resonance. But I mean, it's, if you look attentively at this array, it's nothing more than the bunch of the, well, I understand it's not very complex engineering system, but actually it's very easily replaceable. And even if you hit it, as I already stated, radar continues to operate. So, and yeah, you can load it on the, on the aircraft or transport airplane, and they will deliver it to fix it or replace it altogether. So that's not big deal. I doubt they hit anything in terms of the radar stations of S-300. That would imply that essentially S-300 hasn't been turned on, and they missed whatever the missile they launched. I have my own issues with those claims, because I have a little bit understanding of what, those air defense complexes are and how they operate. So most likely, as I already stated, they damaged one of the resonances. And so and again, it could be that INT 124 didn't bring their replacement array at all. It could have been yet another two Su-35s which came in, for all we know. The flow information from Iran is extremely limited, and both Russia and Iran, they keep it pretty much under wraps for people not to have, a precise idea what is going on. So for all intents and purposes, it could be, as I already stated, another couple of Su-35s.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens later. Here, by the way, just to give you an idea of how things are being portrayed in the Western media, here's General Jack Keane talking about what he believes happened afterwards.
Well, the military effects of that strike is beyond what's being reported, because they have literally taken down most of the Russian missile defense systems that the Russians gave them years ago. And that's what's really protecting their nuclear enterprise, their oil and gas industry, and other key strategic assets like the missile production factories that the Israelis did destroy at multiple sites. Right. It remains to be seen what Iran's going to do. They're saying they're going to use Iraq to do this, but that won't change the scenario for Israel. Whether the missiles come from Iraq or the missiles are launched out of Iran, they're being executed by Iranian leaders, and Israel will hold them accountable. And Iran, as I said, is very vulnerable here. We'll see if this is bluster on the part of the Iranians, or are they really going to deliver another comprehensive attack.
Well, and that is a question there. Is this just Iran just being blustered to sound tough, and or do you think that they're actually going to do something in the near term?
If Iranians say so, they will do it most likely. Most likely. These are not the people who love just bluster. So they have their own calculus in all those affairs. And yeah, listening to Jack Keane it's torturous, really, it's excruciating. In fact, is the only true Russian S-300 which are located, they are located around Bushehr nuclear power station. They guard their Bushehr and obviously the installations which very many Russian specialists live in there. So, but I think so. Iran decides to do this, and whatever the calculus, but my guess, my hypothesis, if you wish, is that they will be doing this in terms of pushing Netanyahu regime a little bit over the edge, because obviously they have much more comprehensive intel from the inside Israel than we have here. And I think so that's a political decision as much as it is military one.
So now let me ask you this, maybe even beyond military political into the diplomatic. So it's not just a matter of Iran defending itself with air defense missiles, but also diplomatically, it's now a member of BRICS, and you have China with a significant, I won't say dependency, but certainly importance because of the 1.5 million barrels a day of oil. And you have Russia that needs this regime to remain intact because it needs Shaheeds and several other kinds of military arrangements here. To what extent does Israel have to be careful that it doesn't knock the Iranian regime out and potentially anger Russia or China?
I don't think so. Israel has the capability to start with to do so. It is clear that it was without United States Air Force tanker capability, they wouldn't be able to really just do anything much at all. So, and yeah, the only thing they have also to move some assets to Iraq, and you know what, Iran will know if they move those assets to Iraq, both due to ground intel, which they have, excellent intel, we would say, they have in Iraq, and of course the satellite imagery and things of this nature. So it is diplomatic game here, but it's difficult for me to assess, really, having so little information on what Israel's intentions are. We know that their coalition, which they have in the Israeli government, is being torn apart essentially by we know what is happening in the southern Lebanon, and this doesn't look good for Israel. And
how much, I guess, I don't know if it's political, diplomatic capital or even military support. How far would China and Russia go to make sure that Iran doesn't suffer too badly?
Well, Russia does supply Iran with some technology, It doesn't mean that Iran has the latest technology. They probably would love to have some latest iterations of S-400, and as I already stated, it's difficult to assess it because it held so much under wraps that first rumors about Su-35s, which have been delivered to Iran, appeared sometime like 8 months ago or so. So we do not even know if they have now some first formation or unit of Su-35s to counter, which they can, something in the air. As per air defense systems, as already stated, Iran produces own air defense systems, and quite a few of them. Iran, in other words, has a massive air defense capability or indigenous air defense capability. It might not be as good as, for example, S-400s, but this is by no means a trivial thing. You cannot discount it because they produce it themselves. At some point of time, about 10 to 15 years ago, Iranians had the social issue, which of course they have the oversupply of the engineers, as a matter of fact. There are a bunch of their Iranian guys who go and get the STEM education, including from Russia, by the way, and you have suddenly oversupplied of those people. So they have their capability to design, so to speak, obviously sometimes basing on the experience of other people such as Russia or China, but they do have the indigenous air defense capability, including partially from North Korea too. So it is by no means that Russia just merely supplies them with something. They produce a lot of it by themselves. So they do have capability. They do have capability to mitigate or blunt practically anything which Israel can deliver against them, with the exception, of course, if they suddenly Israel decides to commit suicide and uses their Samson option and basically launches nuclear missile. Then it's completely
then it's the whole world is in a different game at that point.
Yeah,
I want to switch gears slightly and look at some of the surrounding things you had mentioned earlier. The comprehensive strategic position that Israel finds itself in, and you mentioned that they're getting really drawn into southern Lebanon, and they're having some trouble down there. I don't want to give you any more PTSD, but David Petraeus was actually talking about some of this stuff as well recently. And at first, he's going to mention some things that are just partially factually true about how things are in Lebanon.
The campaign that they have launched has been devastatingly effective to a degree. They haven't just decapitated the leadership of Hezbollah, they have decimated it. It's not just Hassan Nasrallah and 18 of the 20 next leaders, or what, and now his presumptive heir recently as well. It's thousands of leaders who had the pagers that apparently were altered and exploded, then who had walkie-talkies, which was their next resort, having already given up cell phones because they apparently believed that the Israelis could geolocate those. So they have really damaged very significantly, the Israelis have, the Hezbollah command, control, and communications capabilities. And that seems to be preventing Hezbollah from launching the kind of coordinated, very substantial attack with some of the 130,000 or so missiles and rockets they have left.
Now, I want to break down some of the stuff he says there into two different components, one operationally and one tactically. From the operational perspective, it certainly is true that Israel had an absolutely devastating attack on the Hezbollah leadership. How much difficulty do you think that those losses had in now allowing its tactical formations to remain effective?
Well, for me, it's difficult to say. That's my difference between Petraeus. With Petraeus, I cannot, decidedly say one way or another. There's no doubt that it had impact, but I think so. It's a multiple redundancy system, from what I understand, the Hezbollah. So in this case, yeah, they killed some numbers of the. I don't know where he got thousands. I mean, evidently not everybody at all have been killed, even by those exploding pagers. But yeah, they had sustained damage. But I'm pretty sure there are many people who can step into the position of power and control that it can regenerate itself pretty much. And evidently, by the results, or rather lack thereof, Israel Defense Force in southern Lebanon, we can say that it regenerated at least partially, and Hezbollah is giving IDF a very bad time. And it is confirmed by the facts on the ground, and it's really bad for IDF right now.
In fact, there was a study, it was in the Jerusalem Post here, talking about the effectiveness of the IDF in southern Lebanon after the first full month. And in this one here, you see it says, what does the data tell us about? Well, there's some interesting things in there. Number one, we have some independent analysts suggesting that the death toll could be somewhere between 60 and 80. This article here recommends 88. We had Alex of History Legends on a couple of days ago saying that he thought it was more like 42. So actually he thought less than that. But then the estimate based on his analysis of reports could be as high as 400 wounded in that. One of the other things interesting about Alex from History Legends analysis was that he showed a graphic map that showed this is after a month and potentially up to near 500 total casualties, killed and wounded. This is as far as they've been able to get so far. So the question is, do you think Israel can continue to maintain this level of operations and continue to take more of southern Lebanon?
Not without the United States aiding it. In and by itself, I don't think so. They have enough wherewithal especially in terms of the reserves and things of this nature, and economics to do it. I mean, they do sustain a very heavy losses on the armor, and so without the United States, they cannot do anything really of significant damage anymore. The only thing they have is the decent Israeli Air Force. That's pretty much it. And after the Hamas attacks, well, we can call them initially as the terrorist attacks, then the genocide which followed on part of Israel. But even Colonel General Polikovsky, and he is no lightweight. He, about 3 months ago, I even posted this in my blog. He stated the whole myth of IDF has been blown up to smithereens, essentially. So all this, great, advanced, army. No, I don't think so. And evidently, they have systemic issue with the combat training, with the morale, and things of this nature. So in this case, as I already stated, not for once, without the United States, they can do very little now. It is United
really,
States.
I think to your point there. So that's the situation in southern Lebanon with Hezbollah, and of course there's the continuing operations in the Red Sea and in Yemen with the Houthis, which they have never been able to conquer, both even with direct participation of the United States and Great Britain. But then the biggest one of all, of course, is Hamas in the Gaza Strip. I mean, we're now 13 months and rolling, and just no end in sight for that. And actually, Petraeus actually had an interesting thing to say on that topic as well.
In Gaza, you still have substantial remnants of Hamas, of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and then criminal gangs and so forth that are essentially controlling various parts of that territory. And Israel needs to go in because there is no other alternative. Start from the north and work their way to the south and clear and hold, not just clear and leave, which is what they have been doing. Do what we did during the surge, which is you clear and hold, you create gated communities, you come in a mile, let's say, east-west wall, you could throw that up overnight, 12 miles probably at the most. A couple of north-south walls, you create 3 or 4 gated communities, you clear them painstakingly of all enemy. You issue biometric ID cards to those inside that area.
So,
oh, God.
I could spend 30 minutes talking about a lot of the things she's talking about, what happened in Iraq back during his surge were inaccurate.
We know how that worked out, but yeah, sure.
But yeah. So, but then an independent analysis of what's happened showed, Gary, if you can throw that other headline up there, that an analysis after the 13 month of fighting is that basically maybe half, not that one, the one on Hamas, no, the one on Hamas. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah, so basically what it said was that the Hamas side had, that's the one, that they've been significantly weakened, but far from eliminated. When you delve into the more of the story there, it says that, as it says there on the bottom, this group may still retain nearly half of its fighters. And it is shocking that with the extraordinary, one might even say unprecedented level of destruction in this tiny little block that's Gaza Strip, and still they possessed half of their military power, maybe not all their combat power, but certainly their personnel. And of course, as we've seen in all these kinds of fights, every time Israel kills a bunch of innocent people, they create more enemies. So even if half of the Hamas fighters are still violent, but half are gone, who knows how many more Israel have been accused. So with what's already going on in Iran, the Houthis, Lebanon, and still in Hamas, how can Israel win this war?
Oh, no, it can't. It can't. What they can do is to do this so-called diplomatic legerdemain, but they can't. Israel on its own doesn't have resources. And you're absolutely correct stating that Hamas, they do have inflow of new forces because people want, to avenge what happens there. And when they see killing their children, killing their relatives, and basically ethnic cleansing and genocide, that's what it is. So in this case, they cannot kill Hamas because Hamas has now become essentially more than just some kind of the isolated military or political force. It is now ideology because obviously those people who kind of ended up under the steamroll of IDF, they will never forget that. They will always be after Israelis And that's just, never-ending story until either side collapses, which in this case, Arabs and Arab Street simply has more. Israel doesn't have resources and human resources. So we might be, I'm not saying that it's necessarily predetermined, although some people say that it is going to happen, but I'm not specialist in the area. But I definitely can see the possibility of Israel simply melting away. And that's probably already is happening. They are melting away.
Yeah, either that or they'll do what they have done many times in the past, that when they have recognized that moment is approaching, and then they make some sort of a deal to just tie it off and then just deal with it later. They
freeze the conflict somehow. Yeah, that's what it is.
But all that could be turned upside down depending on what Iran chooses to do next, and we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, again, I wish I was a fly on. Well, I don't know Farsi anyway. Not much good I would do is sitting and listening to what they discuss. But they do have proper intelligence, and definitely Iran, actually, as it shown, it definitely has the ability to measure response. That it, basically it gets them to achieve their political objective. And their political objective, obviously, now I'm pretty sure many of them want Israel gone. So, and maybe they understood that that's the time to do it.
Yeah, and we're probably going to find out sooner rather than later. I want to shift gears here to the other war that we talk a lot about. There's some similarities between some of those, and that is the Russia-Ukraine war. So the latest news out, even as today, is that there has been, allegedly, the first North Korean troops have come under fire in the Kursk region. Now, I put a caveat on that because this comes from the Ukrainian claims, and so far they have not produced any photo or video evidence of it, but they claim that they're now engaged in having some actual casualties in the area. What do you know about what the North Koreans are actually doing there?
Oh, there is no North Korean formation there at all. I mean, there are many Asiatic Russians. I mean, like Yakuts or Buryats, many of them, they look like Koreans for all intents and purposes. They are racially Asiatic people. They look like pretty much any Korean or even Japanese. And so there's very little difference. But yeah, it's the same old story, same old spin. It's obviously, and Russians actually beginning to spin it in their favor at this stage, and obviously even trolling. But reality is, this is all spun by Kiev, and it's the subservient Giorno core from the West. And what can I say? I mean, that's complete baloney. I mean, just who in their mind, especially considering the level of Russian general staff, would say, oh, okay, let's get, North Koreans and, get them into line. It just, I mean, militarily is stupid, okay? You have completely different TOE, table of organization and equipment, and you want to incorporate whatever the formation into the actual combat. I mean, this is so stupid. I cannot even express. Yeah, this is not to say that some North Korean officers or special forces, like small subunits, cannot be there. Maybe just to gain some combat experience and things of this nature. But all this North Korean troops, it's literally. I have no words to describe it. This is such a
well, who does have words to describe it, and that's Volodymyr Zelensky. And I think that, of course, I can say I don't have any on the ground. I can't authoritatively say what is or isn't happening, but I can say that if you look at who's got motivation to spin this tale, here is one, and watch very clearly what his bottom line is and why he thinks it's important.
North Korean soldiers are already on the territory of Russia, already preparing for fight, already 3,000 of soldiers with officers and with generals. Some additional thousands will come, they are on the way, and we think that the information from our intelligence, yes, that they will come about 12,000 will be on the ground. That I think that the voice of the United States, the voice of NATO, the voice of Western partners, the voice of Global South and China is not so loud as it has to be now about North Korean contingent on the territory of Russia. I think it's very dangerous. It opens the new page in this war.
So he went on to say in another context that this is going to be World War III, and everybody has to get involved with what's going on. So
Yeah.
seems like that might be his motivation.
Yeah, the guy, well, we understand, and especially a bunch of journalists who listen to him, they are also nincompoops with basically. So you can sell any, pardon my French, BS to them. Just give me any super pooper expert from CNN. I can fool him for 2 hours, and he or she will not understand they are making clowns out of them. He talks about 3,000, roughly initial thing. Oh, okay. So we're talking about a roughly brigade, okay, or what would amount to roughly, brigade combat team in the U.S. Army. If he can show me how you can integrate those people, that would be amazing, So let alone he talks about 12,000. So we are talking about division. It's obviously it's a complete baloney, and it is done for a simple reason. Yeah, as you correctly stated, to get more involved of NATO countries, So because he knows the story, and he's the dead man walking anyway, so he will go and lie as. We are getting into the yet another Ghost of Kiev story here, okay? Or those Patriots PAC-3 shooting down every single Kinjal hypersonic weapon. So that's the same level. That's the same baloney. It has only one political purpose, is to get United States involved literally on the ground with the rest of the NATO countries, period. That's it. It's about the internationalization of the conflict. If Russians have the North Koreans, so we can have French, German, American troops on our side. That's the only thing which is behind that. There's nothing there. From military point of view, it is absolutely lowest of the lowest, because, anybody who ever wrote the plan of the combat training on the level of the brigade level, okay, and I did, by the way, so it's just, how you can even do this, how you can integrate it. It will take, for example, I don't know, a year. And then, of course, there's a language barrier, although some North Koreans do speak Russian. It is so stupid that and it actually one of the basically manifestations of the desperation on his part, because we know how it's going there, and
yeah.
But,
and in fact, talking about desperation, I'm going to show you a clip here. And by the way, that we didn't have time to put the translation underneath, so I'm going to actually read that over as he's talking. But as I'm reading here, and you're watching him as he speaks, note the look in his face. This is somebody who looks like that. This is really, really starting to wear on them. Go ahead and roll that, Gary. It says that in October, more than 2,000 Shahed drones were used against Ukraine, against our people, literally every single day. This is the number of Shahed drones, means more than 170,000 components that should have been blocked are being supplied to Russia, microchips, microcontrollers, processors, and lots of different parts. And sadly, including companies in China, Europe, and America. Sanctions must be increased. They must be effective. And every scheme to circumvent sanctions is a crime against people and the world. This is a global threat, and only a global special pressure can overcome it. And look how red his eyes are. We've shown him at some other times there, and you can just really see that the strain has got to really be getting to him.
Yeah. First, he is constantly high on cocaine. Everybody knows that. And again, he is a clown. He is the guy who has no idea what modern military is. He also, he has an idea. He lies, basically. And this script is written to him by either people in Washington or in London. But the point is, I like how he calls Shahed. Well, in reality, these are geraniums. But what he doesn't know, and that Russia produces all required microchips from the topology through 160 nanometers to 90 and even 65 nanometers. It covers all requirements and necessities of Russia in modern weaponry. But you know what? It's difficult to explain to people who judge the world by their iPhones what topology of 360 to 65 nanometers is. Well, Russians actually have even own lithography now on that. So, and yeah, that's just another propaganda. And sure, Russians say, yeah, you know, just go sanction us. However, today, what I understood, United States actually now allows some financial transactions between American and Russian banks. So you know what? It's sanctions are good only for Europeans. United States will find a way to trade with Russia in the aspects which are required. So, and yeah, that's the desperation. And he should understand that he's a dead man walking. He is not gonna end up living in his villa somewhere at the Lake Como in Italy or in Switzerland or in Florida, because this guy from the, you know, service of the people from Washington and London killed about 1 million of Ukrainians. Well, he killed it, you know, suicide by the cop, which is Russia. But when you look at the attentively at the numbers, so, and other million, approximately 1 million, is absolutely maimed and completely, you know, suffering from PTSD and, you know, lost limbs. So if this guy thinks that he's gonna live, I have a bridge to sell him, because somebody at some point of time will come and will settle accounts. Be that people who will finally, many did already, wake up to the horrible reality of what has been started by Ukraine. And
well, so that puts him in a really tough position, because if he does what I think you and I and most sane thinking people would recognize, the war is long since lost. There's no path, not even to maintain, much less to even think about a frozen conflict. There's no capacity for that. So the only rational thing would be to make a negotiated settlement on the best terms that you can possibly get to end the killing. That would be one thing. But as you say, then that was going to leave a lot of people asking a lot of hard questions afterwards. But to continue to go down the path of saying, no, we're going to keep fighting and we're going to win, it seems like that's only deepening the hole that you're digging yourself in.
Exactly. This is exactly what is happening. And when you look attentively at the newest cemeteries, which are popping all over Ukraine, in fact is, we have the situation now that their corpses, the way they have been buried, actually, there are some other poisoning of the waters in some creeks, and even the danger of waters being poisoned in Dnieper. So we're looking at the in terms of the combat casualties, something which is unprecedented since the World War II, and the actual numbers are horrifying. And so, if he wants to continue to kill, yeah, Russians will oblige. You know, Russia can do it, or, you know, as long as it takes.
And now let's look at this. Speaking of Russia, so there was another, what to me is kind of a strange headline came out today. And it was saying that Syrskyi is claiming that they have stopped the most fierce offensive by the Russian side since the invasion began. And that's a pretty bold statement. That's curious, because when you read into the comments and the actual quotes that are ascribed to Syrskyi, he doesn't say where it is or how they stopped them. And especially when you start looking and seeing all of the other things that are going on, and all the advances that Russia is making on all the way across the board, it's unclear what he's talking about. And first of all, I wonder if you've heard any of this and know what he's even talking about, stopping a Russian offensive.
No, but I would expect from Syrskyi say anything. You know, he is essentially the guy who is a butcher, and he knows that he probably have to anticipate the same fate as his big boss, as Zelensky. And there are all kinds of things which are pouring through their channels, let's put it this way, that there are calls now in the Ukrainian, whatever is left of the armed forces of Ukraine, to basically march on Kiev, you know. So there is that thing. And then now there is most important thing. What we have now is called sporadic, or in Russian it's called очаговое, which is the spot defenses. There is no actually solid line. There are a bunch of the formations which do not have their flank contacts which other, and they are essentially shoveled into and anchored over at some, towns where they have a chance to be not killed immediately. And every day what you see, and especially when you look attentively how they run from Kursk, there is no, indeed, automobiles, there's no vehicles which they can, mount themselves on and run. And again, even the latest data from Kursk, 14 brigades have been wiped out there of the armed forces of Ukraine. And I mean wiped out. The official number of killed alone for the last 30 days is 27,000. So we're looking at catastrophe, essentially. And yeah, they can continue to say whatever they want. I mean, I can say that I'm Napoleon, who will challenge me on that, and absolutely correctly, he will never say anything. In fact, where and how, but there's another thing. The moment Russians decide change the axis of the advance, that's where they go in, the Ukrainians, and say that, oh, we defeated them, but then, of course, the axis change, they bypass and then surround and kill them. This is how it works. It's always was PR thing. Right now, what you have, essentially, as I already stated, slaughter. It is a slaughter. And
yeah, in fact, Gary, if you could bring up that map of the Kursk area, you can see this is from the Institute for the Study of War.
Oh God!
And you can say now, listen, their analysis is hideous, but their maps are actually usually pretty good. And even they're showing, how much territory has that Ukrainians initially pushed out to, and now how much is left. This blue area in the middle there, that's about all that's rest. I mean, it's pushing back in on Suja again. That was the first big city to fall, and now then they're squeezing back down there. You see there's some areas in the north which are at risk of being cut off. But I mean, the whole thing is just being squeezed to death. And I just, it's hard for me to fathom why Ukraine, after they claimed starting on August 6th, that this was, to force Russia to pull troops from elsewhere or whatever. Well, obviously that didn't happen. And then by the end of the first month, and they should have just withdrawn them immediately and put them elsewhere where they actually are in real need in the Eastern Front. But they never did. And to this day, they continue to feed. I've heard reports of up to 2,000 military vehicles of all different types have been just literally sacrificed. And I just, for the life of me, can't understand why they keep them there every day. Do you know?
Yeah, I know, because in order to understand that, one has to understand what happened in Ukraine, or whatever is going to be left of it, in the last 30 plus years. How the whole nation have been brainwashed. It is essentially a pattern after the Germans during the coming to power of Adolf Hitler, and brainwashing nation into the Third Reich mythology and things of this nature. Precisely the same thing. Another matter, of course, unlike Germans who had actually conquered the whole Europe, we are talking about the people who have been also, fed this myth of the exceptionalism by none other than, for example, Americans. And many people wouldn't like to hear that, but Ukraine got armed to the hilt precisely on Trump's watch. Before that, it wasn't that much. There was some training and some, hardware which was delivered there. But on Trump, it went into the overdrive. And this is what actually it's basically the whole army was organized as the ram against Russia. By on the eve of the 24th February 2022, it was the strongest European army. Strongest. And and that's what is the result. Many of them believe. But very many now are being thrown as the cannon fodder. They are caught on the streets. They are just, they pumped with the drugs, a lot of drugs, and they're thrown at their line of combat contact where they die. Naturally, they die.
Now that was just the Kursk area alone, which maybe it's a microcosm for the disaster of what Ukraine has been doing. And of course, that's on top of the entire year of 2023, where they had their attempted offensive operation,
Oh,
which
God.
broke its teeth on the first of 5 lines of defense, never penetrated it fully. And then now the full calendar year of 2024, which has seen Russia continuing to advance. But it's not just continuing to advance. As this chart from the New York Times shows, this is something that has been escalating dramatically, especially over the last number of months. You go back to June on the far right, you see that Russia took, I want to say it was 40 square kilometers of territory, and then it's just been escalating every single month since. And of course, along with every bit of that territorial gain comes Ukrainian military casualties, and they are also starting to spike and go higher as it goes forward. Russia has no shortage of men or material, ammunition, or defense industrial base capacity. Ukraine doesn't have enough of any of those categories. And one has to wonder, how much longer can this fiction go on before the Ukrainian army literally just collapses?
It's difficult to say, obviously, because many people do not understand that when Russia sat deliberately after it withdrew from Kherson area and sat into the strategic defensive, it was still maintaining operational initiative and allowed those people to go and basically, impale themselves on whatever was presented at that time on the line of combat. And do not forget, and this was stressed as of lately by Vladimir Putin again and Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, that even data which they provide today is extremely conservative and is not counting on what is happening in the operational, even tactical rear, because you cannot objectively, so to speak, verify the numbers. You can verify the numbers, which you can only do at the line of the combat contact. And the question is not about territory. The question is, indeed, as you correctly stated, how much longer then can throw people until most of the Ukrainian cities will be empty. You can take a look now and what they look like, those Ukrainian cities, empty streets. Everybody is hiding because the moment you go out, you are caught by this, what is called Tetsaka. Now they call for women and 18-year-old kids to be drafted. And you understand, combat effectiveness of those units will be approaching zero, if not negative. They're probably going to kill more themselves than Russians will kill them. And that's what's left for them. Other than that, I don't know. The whole idea, as we started this segment, is to somehow get NATO involved, thinking that NATO can save the day, which it cannot. And that's why when I see the Institute for the Study of War, we call it the Institute for Unlearning the War. It's difficult to explain to Petreus or Kim how Russians build their operational, let alone strategic reserves. They simply have no reference point to even grasp what it is. Because I can quote my good friend, Colonel Vladimir Trukhan of the Central Apparatus of Ministry of Defense, that Russia right now has immediate what is called the operational reserve, more people than there are people on the line of combat contact. In other words, Russia can bring another whole army which fights right now on the whole length of the 1,000-kilometer front.
Well, in fact, in the amount of time we have left, I'd like to talk about that possibility, because that's one of the things that I've used about with a number of guests on our show that we've had here, and a number of others that I've talked about. When you look at the map and you take a look at where all the weakening of the Ukraine side is, especially in the southern area around the Pokrovsk area, north and south of that, as they continue to move forward, the question is, at what point would Russia bring in a heavy attack, a real big arrow offensive, as they call it, to where potentially now with the weakened lines that it could actually break through and potentially cause the collapse. But so far, we haven't seen it. Now, I have recently seen some reports on Russian Telegram channels that speculate that maybe something's going on in the southern Zaporizhia area. There's been some troops, increasing numbers down there. There was also quite a number up in the northern part where lots of trains had been seen going, bringing lots of equipment, but there had been no new action there. Is something coming, or do you think Russia will continue just the slow, methodical grind?
I don't know what will, but I can tell you one thing. if I would have been the chief of general staff of Russia, huge shoes to fill, let me put it this way. But if I would have been Gerasimov and Rudskoy, who is the chief of operational planning department, I would say, why should we do this? Because we know that at some point of time, the political settlement will be reached, and this political settlement will be under Russian conditions. Why kill people when we will take this territory and we will go to the left bank of Dnieper without any fighting? Because that's what it's going to be. Because when, if it comes to this, everybody who has any military training or serious on the operational level, they understand Russians can come to this table and say, okay, you choose how it's going to be. Is it going to be hurtful, or you can do it, without pain? You abandon the whole left bank of the Dnieper River, or we do it, in a violent way, and we will get the same result. You will be out, and we will be deciding what we're going to do on the, left bank. If that's going to be, how is going to be, you decide. And they know that either way, Russia will get it. So they may spare them some pain. But in this case, I don't see the necessity, especially considering the fact of volatility with the US elections. And who knows who are those people are. It's a whole other separate topic. But the point is, why kill own people and actually potentially endanger more civilians when we can get it just by waiting,
Well, and so along those lines, let me ask you the last question we have here. Since tomorrow is the U.S. presidential election, it would seem that if Trump comes out on top, and it's literally on a knife's edge right now. We showed earlier today that the current polling as of today, the day before the election, is literally deadlocked, 49% to 49%, with 2% uncertain in there. So God only knows how it's going to turn out. But in the event that Trump wins, and he has been outspoken that he wants to get the war negotiated settlement right away. He has no intention to continue on with the Biden-Harris plans, etc. This would seem to deal just a fatal blow to the Ukraine side, especially to the men who are trying to hang on in the hope that maybe Harris wins and keeps the flow going. But if they know that Trump's coming in and he is absolutely going to end it, do you think that could be the impetus that could lead to a negotiated settlement?
No, I don't think so. Trump has the wherewithal here to push anything, because it is, if you look attentively at Russian media in the last months, the dominating motive is Russia doesn't care who wins, literally. And this is a genuine feeling in Russia. Harris, Trump, makes no difference whatsoever. Trump might do it PR action, some kind of PR action. But for Russians, people do not understand that this fundamental tectonic shift in, for example, Russian psyche in the last 2 years. Russians don't care who wins, who is the president of the United States. So that's the incredible shift. I lived 61 years on this earth, and I'm a Cold War warrior. I never saw anything like this in my life. Never. It's just unbelievable. It's historic shift. Russians literally don't give a damn, So, and they will continue with their own plan, whether with the Trump administration offering something or not, we'll see, So they say, yeah, come offer. We'll see what you're offering.
So let me ask you the $1 million question here. And I know no one's going to have a crystal ball, but based on your military knowledge and your assessment and your understanding of both sides, if Russia continues down the path that you're talking about, which is basically the slow, methodical grind, how much longer do you think the war could go before Ukraine finally is just ground out?
Oh, gosh. I hate those questions because obviously, so I don't know, a few months maybe, it depends. We know that they are at the breaking point, so maybe indeed they decide and go for the big red arrows offensives. Who knows? They might go for that too, Difficult for me to say literally. I don't have enough information to really make this conclusion.
Yeah, we don't, but it is, I think, crystal clear where this is going to end. There's no end other than Ukraine is defeated. The only question is on what terms.
On what terms, yeah.
I see. Well, listen, we'll certainly keep an eye on this, and we'll see how it continues to evolve. Thank you very much for coming on today.
My
We
pleasure.
really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And we appreciate you guys too. Always value. If you please don't mind liking and subscribing. If you haven't already done that, it helps a lot more than you may know. Also, make sure everybody's aware here. We have our podcast now. I know everybody can't always watch online to the videos here, but you can sometimes listen to them on the go. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict, nearly anywhere you get your podcast. Just type in Daniel Davis Deep Dive, and you will find us waiting for you there. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.